Good afternoon, and I apologize for the delay in getting us started, but I will explain during the presentation here the reason for that delay, and you will see quickly that it was certainly newsworthy and required the inconvenience of the additional 20 minutes it took for us, 15 minutes for us to be able to tell you the very latest that is happening. Thank you all for coming. Before I get into the details of the situation with Lighthouse Excalibur and the state's insurance market, I want to be clear about the most important thing I have to say today, and that's why the delay. If you are a policyholder who still has a Lighthouse insurance policy, you need to contact your agent now for help finding a new policy. Lighthouse policies were set to be canceled on June 22nd. However, the receiver has just obtained an extension on Lighthouse's reinsurance through June 30th. Upon court signature on that filed document, this means Lighthouse policyholders will now have until the end of the month to contact an agent and put a new policy in place. Louisiana policyholders should also be aware of the upcoming cancellation of policies for two other insurers, Maison Insurance Company and Southern Fidelity Insurance Company. Maison is a Louisiana insurer with about 12,000 policies. Due to significant catastrophe losses insurers across our state have experienced since 2020, Maison was not able to obtain reinsurance for this year's hurricane season, this year's starting this month, and is canceling policies effective June 30th. Otherwise, Maison was solvent and doing business and serving about, at the beginning of this month, 30,000 policyholders. But with its inability to access reinsurance in the tightening reinsurance marketplace, they were no longer a solvent place for a company to continue doing business during hurricane season. Maison's inability to obtain reinsurance is a serious threat to its solvency, which is one of only a few reasons the law allows an insurer to cancel policies mid-term. Southern Fidelity is a Florida-based insurer with about 42,000 policies in Louisiana. Florida placed that company, into liquidation yesterday, which means Southern Fidelity's Louisiana policyholders will have their policies canceled on July 15. Like Lighthouse policyholders, Maison and Southern Fidelity policyholders need to contact an agent now to find a new policy if they've not already done so. If you need help finding an agent, you can visit our website, www.ldi.la.gov, and click the link that says, quote, "Find a property and casualty agent," close quote. This will take you to a search tool that will allow you to find a list of agents in your area. Let me talk for a few minutes about the state of the overall homeowners market in our state. One of our most important duties as a regulator is to monitor the financial health of insurers to protect policyholders. The destructive hurricane season of the past 2 years have created a turbulent homeowners market. 4 insurers with Louisiana policyholders domiciled in our state failed in the aftermath of Laura, Delta, Zeta, and Ida. Those companies are Access Home, State National Fire, Americas, and Lighthouse. Insurers were able to withstand the major losses from Hurricanes Laura and the others of the 2020 storm season. Unfortunately, the unprecedented level of damage from Hurricane Ida just 1 year later broke the backs of those 4 companies. In January, the Louisiana Department of Insurance was able to quickly and effectively work with the receiver to find a new soft landing for the policyholders of the 3 companies that had been put into receivership at that time, with a total of 55,000 policies from those 3 failed insurers. That company, SafePoint Insurance Company, out of Miami, Florida, took on the same terms and conditions, on a go-forward basis, all of the 55,000 policies left behind by those 3 failed companies. Lighthouse At the time Ida made landfall on August 29 of last year, Lighthouse had enough reinsurance to cover up to $316 million in storm losses. Lighthouse estimated its losses from Hurricane Ida would be $200 million, which means their projection showed they had more than enough reinsurance to cover claims from that storm. The magnitude of Ida claims that actually came in was significantly higher than Lighthouse's projections. Lighthouse received 16,000 claims from Ida, representing losses on over half of its book of 30,000 policies. In early March, their projection for damages had increased from $200 million to as much as $356 million. Once the LDI was notified of this significant change in projected losses, we immediately directed Lighthouse to provide a plan of action for how they would cover these higher losses. Lighthouse presented solutions, including raising additional capital. But later that month, they again increased their projected losses, this time to somewhere between $367 and $386 million. Based on the increased projection in late March and Lighthouse's inability to execute its plan to remain solvent, I moved to take control of the company on March 29. After the receiver took over Lighthouse, their actuaries further revised the projected losses for Ida-related claims to $440 million. We've been unable to find new insurers interested in taking on most of Lighthouse's policies due to the hardening reinsurance marketplace. But I do want to say that initially we had 3 insurers submit in writing to our receiver proposals to take on 25,000 of the 30,000 policies being left behind by Lighthouse Insurance. The order to place Lighthouse, which today, or at the time of its insolvency, of its being put into receivership, had 29,000 policies. Its liquidation order was signed by the court on May 23, which triggered the receiver's duty to issue letters notifying policyholders that their policies would be canceled 30 days after liquidation. Next steps for the affected policyholders. As I mentioned earlier, the most important thing Lighthouse, Maison, and Southern Fidelity policyholders can do is contact an agent now and get a new insurance policy in place. The deadline for Lighthouse and Maison policyholders is June 30th. The deadline for Southern Fidelity is July 15. Policyholders who are unable to find a policy in the private market will be able to obtain a policy from our state insurer of last resort, Louisiana Citizens. But that has to be done through an agent. Again, folks can visit our website, www.ldi.la.gov, and click the link that says Find a Property and Casualty Agent to use our search tool that will allow you to find a list of agents in your area. Louisiana Citizens is now averaging 2,800 personal lines quotes per day and is binding an average of 762 new policies on those 2,800 inquiries on each day. This quote-to-bond ratio indicates there are companies that are continuing to write new business, including both admitted and non-admitted companies. Since June 1, Citizens has been asked also to process 2,200 commercial quotes, of which 375 were bound by an agent putting coverage in place with Citizens. For Lighthouse policyholders who have an open claim and are trying to get it resolved, it is important to know that your claim is now being handled by the Louisiana Insurance Guarantee Association, or LIGA. LIGA will also begin handling Southern Fidelity claims soon. LIGA is activated and paying claims as we speak. LIGA will also refund unearned premium money to Lighthouse and Southern Fidelity policyholders after those policies are canceled. LIGA has been performing well under the circumstances, and I have full confidence it is doing everything it can to help policyholders navigate the claims process as they have been doing for several months now. Thank you for, let me just close by saying thank you for joining us here today. I hope this information is helpful to you and the policyholders of the impacted companies. I can't say it enough. If you still have a Lighthouse, Maison, or Southern Fidelity insurance policy, you need to contact your insurance agent now for help in finding a replacement policy. The deadline for Lighthouse and Maison policyholders is June 30th. The deadline for Southern Fidelity is July 15th. You need to have a new policy in place before then to avoid a gap in your coverage during hurricane season. Another thing that can happen and will happen if you don't place it with someone else and have a mortgage on your property, that lender will have the right under your mortgage in almost every case that I know of to force place coverage with another insurer, and that, I assure you, will be much more expensive and not in your best interest. With that said, I'm happy to answer any questions any of you might have. Ms. Wilson, thank you for being here. Can you get a mic? The last part of your question first, not to my knowledge. I am not aware of any here or in Florida operating here, as Southern Fidelity was put into liquidation yesterday by Florida. At the beginning of all of this series of failures, the first one was also a Florida-based company, Gulfstream, that predated Ida in its failure, based on its losses in Florida. I think Southern Fidelity, for example, went into insolvency. They certainly had huge losses from Ida, everyone did, but they also were asking Florida for, on its book of business earlier this year, for an 83% rate increase on their Florida business because of their ongoing financial problems, and that was denied. And so it went into receivership yesterday, liquidation actually yesterday, and impacted 42,000 of what you said totals 90,000 policies with policyholders left without coverage at this point.
If I could follow up, just before I walked in, there are responding to.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Talking to an insurance agent just before I walked in,
Uh-huh.
and I talk to them daily. Many say they've never seen the insurance landscape this bad. Do you expect that the 90,000 or so people who are losing their policies, most of them to be able to get insurance in the private market, or will citizens have to absorb the majority of it?
Let me assure you that our predicament and challenge at this point is much less than it was 15 years ago in the aftermath of Katrina and Rita. And based on the numbers that Citizens provided me this morning, where approximately 3 times as many policies as they're placing on their books are being asked for quotes and not being sent to Citizens, there's still markets out there available in the private sector to write policies. And I think that market will only increase as we go forward, starting with the significant June 1st date when everybody's reinsurance had to be in place for this hurricane season. Many were going up into, some went beyond June 1st before they were able to finalize their reinsurance. And as we said, Maison didn't really fail. They just didn't have reinsurance, which represented a serious threat to their solvency, and we took over that company for that reason. They didn't get reinsurance, couldn't get reinsurance in time for this hurricane season.
I talked to a couple of state lawmakers, more than 2 actually, yesterday.
A couple of agents, you said?
Yes, state lawmakers who were caught in this, and one of them said that
Sure, sure. Citizens is a state-sponsored market of last resort. It is there to provide coverage for folks who can't get coverage from the private sector. And in order to keep it as a market of last resort, similar to the former Louisiana Association of the Louisiana Health Plan, which was a market of last resort for folks who couldn't get coverage in the private health insurance market. The assigned risk pool for drivers who have bad driving records, DWIs, whatever, who can't get insurance in the private sector. They go to the Louisiana Association, the Louisiana Assigned Risk Pool. That also is a market of last resort, priced above the private sector to keep it from becoming a market of choice rather than a market of last resort. And that's really important to do because there are folks all over our state who need a market of last resort. We have about 1,000 policies in the Shreveport area in Citizens, folks who live too far away from fire protection, folks who have aluminum wiring in their homes and no insurer wants to take that risk. We have another 1,000 in the Monroe area in North Louisiana. But truly, the Citizens Book of Business is dominant, is largely concentrated in the 3-parish area of Jefferson, Orleans, and St. Tammany parishes. And so because of that, although they were fully financially capable beyond what Laura, Delta, and Zeta presented in 2020, the reinsurance they had in place for 2021 was also more than they needed to cover their Ida claims. So they're totally solvent. After Katrina and Rita, Citizens had 173,000 policies. Today they have 55,000 and are increasing on a daily basis because of these insolvencies, won't get anywhere close to 173,000. They had to issue an assessment, Citizens did, 2 months after Katrina and Rita, and get $250 million from all the property companies doing business in the state within 30 days to continue operating and paying their claims. 2 months after that, right after I took office, we had to go to Wall Street with the support of then Governor Blanco, who joined us by speakerphone, to advocate a $1 billion bond issue be sold. The second largest bond issue in the history of the state at that time, that we are still paying assessments for 5 more years to amortize that $1 billion bond issue. So the way Citizens is solvent is not through reserves. They don't have reserves. They do have $150,000 cash on hand, but that's profits from operations over in recent years when they were profitable because of quiet hurricane seasons. But they have the authority to assess and the duty and obligation to assess as a state-sponsored market of last resort and pay the claims for the coverage for those folks who can't get coverage in the private sector. For now, that's going to continue to grow. By the end of this year, it will stop growing and companies will start taking policies out of Citizens as they've been doing for the past 10 years. When Citizens, Katrina aftermath, 173,000 policies. When Laura hit last year, year before last, it had 35,000 policies. We had gone to the legislature to slow down the takeout by, frankly, a couple of these companies that have now failed, policies out of Citizens because the law previously mandated Citizens to offer all of their policies to private companies to take them off of the books because all of us are at risk for that market of last resort, subject to being assessed as we have been for that bond issue over the past 15 years. So long answer, but the answer is Citizens is fine. It can handle it. It is handling it, and it will grow, no doubt, probably to 90 or 100,000 policies by the end of this year, and then start offering those policies at the end of this hurricane season to private companies wanting to do business in our state.
I know about that a little bit, but you know there are thousands of property owners out there who are really nervous right now.
Who what?
Are really nervous.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
And hurricane season, can you assure them that people who are affected by these cancellations, that their claims will be paid?
If, absolutely, the claims will be paid because that goes to LIGA. Those claims are left over from before the insolvency. Now, to get coverage through this upcoming hurricane season, that's why I kept emphasizing, contact your agent. We today spent $1.2 million to extend that reinsurance that we bought for the receivership book of business for another week, to give folks another week to get in touch with their agent and get coverage put in place as we come to those deadlines of June 30th. That's really, really the most important part of what we're here discussing today, no question about it. And I recognize the agents, in many cases, are overwhelmed. I have agent friends, some live within walking distance of my home in Metairie, who are working staffs in the morning before 8 o'clock and in the evening after 5 o'clock because the Citizens IT system is working quicker and more reliably and before work days begin and after work days end at 5 o'clock in the evening. But they are reaching out, sending certified letters to people they can't get on the phone to make sure that they know that they have to get coverage either from some other company or from Citizens to not have a gap in coverage as we go into this hurricane season. Thank you. I know Ms. Wilson for a long time. You're a lot younger than I am, not younger than she is, a lot younger than. Okay.
But my question is, after talking to policyholders and agents, I think their concern was timing. We mentioned Lighthouse went to receivership in March. Could have these policyholders been notified earlier?
By law, they can't be canceled midterm until the judge signed the order saying that the company is in receivership. And then once that order, there's very few exceptions to mid-policy term cancellations, like not paying your premium or like trying to perpetrate an arson on your insurer. But the most common one is, well, I guess non-paying your premium is the most common. The next most common is in the event of an insolvency, when the judge signs the order of liquidation. That triggers the start of a 30-day cancellation period. And our receiver is here, Mr. Bostic, and he was prepared, had all the mail drafted at the mail house to go out when the judge had they had to insert into the mail the dates because they weren't sure when it would actually be signed, and the notification went out immediately when the judge did sign the order of liquidation. And it couldn't be sent out before that because we didn't know the date that it would be signed until then.
Okay. And then for the policyholders who already paid their renewal, when can they expect a refund from LIGA?
We have been through that for America's State National and Access Home, and they've all been paid their unearned premium.
LIGA's processing all those now. I don't know that they've all been paid yet.
Okay.
But the answer to your question, if I may,
Yeah.
is that
Come up here so they can hear you, Billy.
And please identify yourself when you get to
And who are you with?
I'm Sabiki, right here, Channel 33.
Good.
So let me confirm, your question is when will they get paid? The vast majority of the policies are not canceled until 30 days after the date of liquidation, which was June 22nd. So they're not canceled yet, so the return premium can't be paid yet. Once those cancel, which is now not going to be the 22nd but the 30th because of the issues that Commissioner Donlin expressed on the giving the agents more time to get it placed. So June 30th is the date of cancellation. On June 30th, we will generate unearned premium reports out of our systems, forward those to LIGA, and then it's in their hands, and they will begin paying claims then.
Have they completed, Billy, have they completed any of the older insolvent companies, Americas and the others that you know of?
They're in the process of doing all of those now. The unearned premium in those other companies weren't the problem they are with Lighthouse. The reason for that is that we were able to obtain assumption agreement from SafePoint. Because SafePoint assumed them, they weren't canceled. So they just rolled into a new carrier in there. So the few unearned premiums claims we did have for those are, I believe, largely finished, but that's really a question for LIGA. I don't get reports on those from them.
Any others? Sure.
What percentage, if you could give us that, are policies through Citizens higher? If you are getting questions about that.
Sure. And it's a formula spelled out in the statute creating Citizens. And it says that Citizens annually has to come to me as the rate regulator for insurance in the P&C market in our state and ask for a rate adjustment in each parish. It's by parish, is it not? Yes. Each parish based upon what their analysis of the private sector writing property insurance in that parish highest cost is, and add 10% to it. So it's a little more than 10% more expensive than the highest parish policy, comparable policy in that particular parish, wherever they live. Unlike the assigned risk pool, which is higher than that, and et cetera, all other residual markets.
And we also have a question from the viewer who said, they're in litigation against an insurer. Against an insurer that is now going out of business or canceling. What will be their cost?
LIGA steps in and takes over that litigation and handles claims and litigation for the failed insurance company. Yeah.
Commissioner, we have a few questions from the live stream.
From a live stream, okay. But before we go to them, what station is that you're with? WBRZ. Okay. Can we answer any questions you have? Nope? No, sir. Okay, got it. And you are with?
Hometown Production.
And no questions?
You answered them all.
Okay. And you, sir? Fox 8. Got you. Sabrina? Good. Great. Go ahead, John.
For those who have policies with one of these failed insurers, and LIGA is now handling their claim, should they wait for LIGA to contact them, or should they reach out to LIGA?
It's their choice. It's going to take a while. Billy, you will take the data from Lighthouse. Well, you've done that already.
Yes.
He said, should the policyholders with a claim against Lighthouse or Maison, should they reach out to LIGA or wait for LIGA to reach out to them?
Okay. If they have already filed the claim with the insurance carrier, if they've already filed their Lighthouse claim, we have already transported all those claims to LIGA, and they have them, and there's no reason to reach out to either Lighthouse or LIGA. They have them, and they're working on them now. We are also taking first notices of loss for all the states but Louisiana, and LIGA is taking the first notice of loss for Louisiana. So if we've got a Louisiana policyholder that has a new claim, they should contact LIGA.
Okay, we have two questions about Southern Fidelity, so I will
Sure.
refer them together. Is there a remote possibility that Southern Fidelity's cancel date could be extended given the number of policies involved, and then given the experience with Lighthouse companies? What are the prospects for finding a company to take on Southern Fidelity policy?
And unfortunately, the answer to that is no, because Southern Fidelity is a 5-state company?
I don't know, but they're a Florida.
Yeah, my understanding is it's Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Louisiana, and Texas. All 5 of those states are, those policyholders are protected by guarantee funds as they are in Louisiana. And those guarantee funds are anxious to cut off their liability for those policies that are going to fall ultimately to the taxpayers of their states that are behind the guarantee funds. And in our case, in our state, we had the authority and the legal basis on which to go to the court today and get approval for that extension. The Florida regulator, who has the biggest part of the Southern Fidelity book of business, is unlikely to want to do that in their state, and the other states would object to it because of the additional risk that comes to them. Am I saying that correctly, Stuart?
Yes.
Okay.
We have time for one more from the live stream. What is the process of receiving a refund for insurance premiums already paid to Lighthouse Insurance?
Billy?
If those policies have already been canceled, that being the biggest caveat, and we've, as of the first of this week, we had 25,000 policies still active. So there's only a small percentage of our policies that actually have been canceled. We are taking those cancellations, we're recasting the data into a form that the guarantee associations can receive, and then they are working those claims. And that is an ongoing process. It happens weekly. So we pull the data and we transport to the guarantee funds weekly, and then they get working on it.
And I appreciate the question because it reminds me that I did not say up until now, us. We can answer those questions. We can direct folks to the receivership or direct them to LIGA as needed, and that would be easily done by calling us at 800-259-5300 or reaching out to us online. There's help available that quickly and that easily for things such as that. Well, I really appreciate the attendance here today and the opportunity to get this message out to our policyholders, our constituents all across Louisiana facing these challenging times as we head into yet another hurricane season. But as I told the independent insurance agents meeting I spoke to yesterday morning, we will get through this. We will take care of our policyholders. Their agents will. We will here at the Department of Insurance and get them placed in a place of comfort and protection instantly through this hurricane season if they will reach out to us or their agent and let us help them through the process. And again, 800-259-5300 for any questions or concerns. This is a lot of information. It's very complex, and we understand the need to be responsive to folks when they have a question or a concern, as many, many do all across the state. Thank you very much. Okay, thanks.